Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be looking at everybody's transactions they've had since September 1st, which is the day I uploaded the first rankings video, is the quarterback video. I'm going to be taking a look at everybody's moves they've made between now and then. I'll let everybody know what I think, like how they improved, where they downgraded in terms of each position, and I'll go into it in depth. The only person I won't be going over will be J-basing, as he hasn't made any moves, obviously. We'll start things off with Scrambled and waggled here. He didn't really change anything with the quarterback room. He acquired Antonio Gibson and A.J. Dillon. He got Antonio Gibson from myself, actually. He got A.J. Dillon from Pussy in a trade earlier this season. He lost Cam Akers to me, and he cut Keandre Miller, who we'll start out with, I don't think was really doing much for him anyway. That's not really a sad loss. So overall, mostly this running back room comes down to him gaining Antonio Gibson, gaining A.J. Dillon, losing Cam Akers. I think Cam Akers and Antonio Gibson are in very similar scenarios, where both of them are very, very, very hard to trust, and both of them could get benched at some point this season. Could, but at the same time, they both could be really good too. It just depends on how they end up playing. I think if you just got Gibson and lost Akers alone, that would still be an upgrade for the running back room just because you already have Brian Robinson, who's the only guy who could replace your guy. So no matter what, you have at least the main guy, no matter what happens here. And then you also have A.J. Dillon, who is he's an okay backup in fantasy. He's completely touchdown reliant. He's nothing you want to like rely on or anything like that. But in scenarios like you're seeing with this specific week, actually, where Aaron Jones out of Big Yawners team might not be playing, if Aaron Jones doesn't play, A.J. Dillon is a very good running back to be starting here in fantasy. Any week Aaron Jones might be out. So overall, keep an eye on A.J. Dillon. I think this is a slightly improved running back room. I think you actually got worse here at the wide receiver room, though, where you gained Mike Williams from myself. You gained OBJ from myself. You picked up Jay Reed from the Packers. I think his name's Jordan. But you lost A.J. Brown to myself. You lost Darnell Mooney to Pussy in that trade we were talking about earlier. Overall, I think Mike Williams and OBJ and Jay Reed aren't nearly as valuable as A.J. Brown alone. Mike Williams he has high upside, but he has a lot of injury risk to him. Overall, even his high upside, I don't think compares to A.J. Brown. You have OBJ coming in, who's fighting between 35 guys on the roster to get catches, and it's looking like he's not going to be the main guy. It's looking like it's going to be Zay Flowers, at least out of week 1. But then you have this Reed guy who I think is going to be another one that kind of gets buried behind the endless depth chart of receivers over in Green Bay between Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs. I don't think he'll really do too crazy. And then you also lost Darnell Mooney. Overall, I think I would much rather have A.J. Brown and Darnell Mooney than Williams, OBJ, and Reed. Even if you want to make a depth argument, I still think it's worse to have those three. I don't think Mooney will do too crazy this season overall, but still, he's better than OBJ and Reed. But yeah, losing A.J. Brown for Mike Williams isn't great overall in terms of just looking at the wide receiver room. Your tight ends, you gained Tyler Higbee, you lost Kyle Pitts, you lost Sam Laporta. That's a big downgrade, at least to me. I think Higbee will be a lot more consistent than Kyle Pitts will be in terms of when Matthew Stafford is healthy and Cooper Kupp is gone. But I think the minute Cooper Kupp comes back, and if he can stay healthy, Tyler Higbee is going to be terrible in fantasy. Kyle Pitts is very boom or bust, though, so it's kind of hard to rank him in a lot of these, but overall, I'd still rather have him over Higbee. Sam Laporta, it was your consistency valve there, but you lost him in the trade to me, and you lost Pitts in the trade to Pussy, but you did gain Higbee from the trade from Pussy. Overall, I think Laporta actually has some decent upside. People are saying he might be like the next TJ Hawkinson for Detroit. I'm not going to say that much, but overall, I think this is still a downgrade because you are losing a lot of upside there just for a little bit of a somewhat consistent tight end. You didn't do anything with your defense or kicker, so we'll jump down to defensive backs. which you lost Nixon, who was the cornerback slash kick returner for the Packers, and you lost Andre Wingard. Now, these aren't horrible losses. Like, you slightly, very slightly downgraded. You technically just dropped these guys, but didn't really pick anyone up for them. So I technically have you losing in the DB column, but it's really not anything to worry about. And then you gained Josie Jewell and Quay Walker. Josie Jewell's a very good linebacker to gain. He'll probably be one of the most consistent linebackers in the league this year, although he did have an iffy week 1, but I think that'll change it as the weeks go on. And then you do have Quay Walker. I would be careful about overstarting Quay Walker, especially now that Devondre Campbell's back. Sure, he put up over 20 points this week, but you look at his tackles, and I'll show you here actually. You look at his tackles. He had 1 tackle solo, 3 tackle assists. So out of these almost 22 points, 21.47, he had a pick. Yeah, he had a pick 6 for 37 yards. Now, I'm not going to do the math right now, but if you just do it off the top of your head, I think an interception is worth 2, touchdown 6. At least 8 points out of those 23 were from that one play. Outside of that, he really didn't do jack shit for you. So I would be a little concerned about starting him. I think I warned you in the starting and bench video. Overall, those are all the moves Scrambled and waggled has made from now and then. Overall, I think he made slight improvements to his team just because of how much better his linebacker core got. But A.J. Brown is a heavy hit he took, and I'm not a fan of him losing some of these players. But overall, I don't know. It's actually kind of hard to say he improved because everywhere he improved kind of gets countered by losing Pitts and Brown. Overall, I'm going to say his team kind of fluctuated about the same. It's going to be hard to trust this as an upgrade. Next, let's look at milf. Of course, it's milf. Now, milf, in terms of the quarterback room, gained Ryan Tannehill and Bryce Young. Thank God, buddy, you finally got quarterbacks. Things are different this time. He finally did it. He got Ryan Tannehill, he got Bryce Young, like I said, who aren't amazing by any means, but compared to what he had, massive upgrade. Instead of just being stuck with Wilson, now he actually has guys he can choose from. Bryce Young might have upside, seeing as he's a rookie. Tannehill is playing behind the worst O-line in football, though. But, oh well, you upgraded your QB room. You listened. You did great. Hooray. Your running backs, you gained Rashad Penny. You lost Kareem Hunt. You lost Alvin Kamara. You lost Tajee Spears. This is a big loss. I don't think it's anything special that you got Rashad Penny. He's buried in a backfield between Kenneth Gainwell and DeAndre Swift. I think it's mostly going to be DeAndre Swift taking it, but even if that wasn't bad enough, you see Jalen Hurts stealing all the touchdowns whenever they get to the 1 yard line. So so these running backs just really aren't impressive to me. You lost Kareem Hunt. I don't think that's a big loss. I don't even know if he's going to get signed this year, so I'm not really going to count that against you. You lost Tajee Spears, which is, I'm not going to knock too much against you. If Derrick Henry ever got hurt, he looked really good in the preseason. That's about all I can say about him. But losing Alvin Kamara for gaining Rashad Penny, that's a bad downgrade overall, though. Because at least Kamara, even if he wasn't doing great this season, would probably be startable. I can't really say the same about Penny. So overall, it's a pretty bad move or bad downgrade at the running back position. Then in a trade with myself, you gained McCole Hardman and lost Odell Beckham Jr. I'm not a fan of either of them in the slightest. I think OBJ is the guy I would personally prefer to have, though, just because at least you have a better quarterback that can take shots and score points. Meanwhile, McCole Hardman is going to be playing with Zach Wilson on a run-heavy offense, so it's very hard to trust that. The one upside McCole Hardman does have over OBJ is that he will be doing kick returns and stuff like that as the season goes on. So maybe he ends up better. Overall, it's kind of a dicey situation. I think they both suck. And then overall, you didn't change anything in any other position. Overall, I think your team definitely got an upgrade overall, even with the big hit from Kamara. Getting quarterbacks is going to really make this team at least competitive compared to what it was before. And then let's move on to the next guy, who is going to be Karen's husband. Karen's husband made a whole bunch of money moves since all this happened. Now, you want to know what he did? He picked up Sauce Gardner and dropped Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis was a backup, so I'm not going to knock that against him. There's a lot of better DBs out there, I'll tell you that now. In terms of real life, yeah, Sauce Gardner's elite, but in terms of fantasy, he's not going to outproduce a lot of these other guys. But at least you have a starter, so yay, it's an upgrade. Going on next, we have Ricktatorship. By the way, I'm not ranking like how good or bad they did based on their moves. I'm just kind of going in order here. Next up, we have Ricktatorship, who, in terms of the running back room, I think downgraded. He gained Kenneth Walker, gained Josh Kelly, lost James Conner, lost A.J. Dillon. I believe he gained Kenneth Walker from a trade from Pussy. He lost James Conner and A.J. Dillon in that same trade, though. And then he picked Josh Kelly up off the waiver. I think Kenneth Walker and James Conner are about as close as you can get in terms of how good one or another is. I'd slightly lean towards liking Conner more, especially when Kyler Murray comes back. But overall, if, say, like, Conner was ranked my number 12 running back, Walker would be my 13th, and so on and so forth. They were, like, neck and neck. But overall, I think losing A.J. Dillon and gaining Joshua Kelly is a bigger loss than it is a win. Plus, I'm kind of leaning towards that end because of James Conner being a bit better than Walker, at least to me. Overall, I will say one thing. I already talked about Dillon, so I won't go too crazy over him. I will say one thing. Josh Kelly, as you're going to see, I already talked about it in this video. In any game that Austin Eckler happens to be going down, he's an instant start. Probably one of the best running backs in the league this week. I'm calling it. He'll probably have a shit ton of receptions. He might not have too many yards or touchdowns, but he'll probably do better than most of the guys you have on your bench right now. Overall, yeah. I don't see him putting up the numbers he put up from week 1 on a weekly basis unless, he does really good. But for that, we'll have to wait and see. Overall, it's a slight downgrade at the tight end or at the running back room. Then you look at tight end. He lost Tyler Higbee in a trade to Pussy. I think Tyler Higbee he finally landed on Evans' team, but first he went to Pussy from Ricktatorship. So overall, just losing Tyler Higbee, you're going to get docked a little bit for that. But overall, you still have Hawkinson, so I'm sure you'll be fine. But overall, you still technically lost him. You did make some improvements at your defensive backs, though, where you gained Jalen Petre and Javon Holland just today. You gained Jalen Petre from the trade with Pussy. He is unfortunately hurt. I don't think it'll be a long-term injury, though. I think he'll be back by next week. I was looking into it. I actually have him in another league. Overall, then you gain Javon Holland. Keep an eye on him. He popped off and had 14 tackles in week 1. I think he was on one of my waiver suggestions from the video before. And then you drop Jalen Thompson, who he's going to be okay, but I don't think he'll do anything special. So overall, you upgraded your DB room quite a bit. And then your linebackers, you just did this today. You you gained Demario Davis. You lost Eric Hendricks. I personally like Eric Hendricks more, but it's kind of hard to say for sure who's better. Because obviously Eric Hendricks went to the Chargers from the Vikings. He used to be a lot better than Demario Davis. But overall, Demario Davis is not bad by any means of the word. Overall, I think this is a very, very slight downgrade. Nothing crazy. I wouldn't go trading for a linebacker because you lost Kendricks or anything like that. I think it's just I think you pretty much picked the best guy up off of free agency and did what you could. Overall, I think the positions you lost in were very minor, and then you did make a big gain at defensive back, so I think your team got better overall. Next, let's look at Mr. Steeler Girl. Mr. Steeler Girl, I think, actually got worse at running back. They lost Kenneth Walker and James Cook. They lost Kenneth Walker in a trade to, I believe, toxiczenpie. And then they lost James Cook in a trade to myself. So, obviously, you're not gaining anything with your running backs there. You're just losing, so I'm going to dock you. Those are 2 solid running backs right there. You did gain at your wide receiver, though. That's some good news. You got Cortland Sutton. You got Jahan Dotson. You got Van Jefferson. You lost Isaiah Hodgins. Isaiah Hodgins, I don't think, is going to do shit, so I wouldn't worry about losing him. You gain Cortland Sutton and Jahan Dotson. Those are 2 startable wide receivers with bad quarterbacks, but if the quarterbacks can pull their heads out of their ass, they're good wide receivers. Van Jefferson, I wouldn't really say too much good about him. He's boomer bust with Matthew Stafford. If God forbid Stafford gets hurt, he's useless. Overall wide receiver room did get better though. Your running back room got worse. And then you got Dalton Schultz in terms of your tight ends, and you lost Zach Ertz. Um, Overall, and this is from the toxic trade too, by the way. Overall, I'm not really, I'm really not too sure of which way to scale this. I think Schultz will be better by the end of the year, but Ertz does have a lot higher upside. It completely comes down to how much Arizona uses their rookie. If Arizona doesn't use their rookie at all and Kyler Murray comes back, okay, you might have a lot, or you might have actually lost in terms of your tight end here, but for now, I think I actually like Schultz over Ertz. Next up, we're going to look at Pussy. Now, Pussy lost Matthew Stafford in terms of the quarterback room to a trade to Toxic. So overall, I'm going to dock you a little bit for that. And I'm not going to count your temporary trade with Evan. I'm not really going to put that in because it's not your future roster or anything like that. You did gain James Conner. You lost Devon Kane and Zach Charbonnet. Overall, your running back room definitely improved by getting James Conner. I just talked about how much I like James Conner. I think he'll be one of the at least top 12 running backs in fantasy, especially when Murray comes back. I wasn't sure. I don't think I agree with your move on dropping a Kane. I don't think that was a very smart move. Yahoo kind of dropped the ball on it by saying that he was inactive when he wasn't actually inactive. He was just hurt. So that was kind of stupid. I don't think losing Charbonnet's much to worry about. If you're a Kenneth Walker person, or if you own Kenneth Walker, you might want to try to get Charbonnet. But other than that, nothing really to worry about. I don't see him doing much this year. And then a Kane, I think he'll be okay to occasionally start. I wouldn't play him all year, but if you need a backup, he'll have a shot to be it. But there's too many running backs in this backfield. It's already a pass heavy offense. So overall, yeah, it's definitely an upgrade at running back. Your wide receivers, you gained Darnell Mooney, you gained Jacoby Myers, you lost Rondale Moore. That's definitely an upgrade. I think you got two guys who have a limited upside, but at least have a chance to go in there and be a plug and play. Jacoby Myers actually had a really good week before he got hurt. And then Darnell Mooney, I don't think he'll do too much, to be honest, as a Bears fan, but it entirely comes down to how Justin Fields feels like playing. And then Rondale Moore, once Kyler Murray comes back, he might actually be solid enough to start on a consistently basis, but I can't say that for certain. I'm just saying this based off of years past. He hasn't done good in over 2 years, so who knows? Overall, I think it's still a slight upgrade overall because you get more depth. Your tight end, you gain Kyle Pitts. Overall, you didn't lose anything, so that's definitely a good thing. He's very boomer bust. I would be careful about him, though. He'll go from winning you your week to losing you your week on a weekly basis, which could be annoying. Your DBs, I think, actually got worse. You gained Ricardo Neal, lost Jalen Petre to the trade of Cranberry. Or not Cranberry, Cree. Overall, I think Petre is going to be one of the best DBs in the league if he can stay healthy. Neal, I think he has upside, an arguable upside, but other than that, I can't really say much about him. Your linebackers, you gained Cole Holcomb, lost Quay Walker. You lost Quay Walker in the trade with Scrambled and waggled, where you also gained Kyle Pitts and Darnell Mooney. As I was just talking about with Scrambled, I don't think Quay Walker is really anything to sneeze at here. Now that Devondre Campbell's back, his tackles are just going to be gone. So he needs to rely on big plays and not getting hurt. Cole Holcomb, I think he'll at least be okay, even if he kind of stinks like he did last week with only, 10 points. I don't think he'll do anything crazy special, but we'll have to wait and see. But at least he has more upside than Quay Walker. And then you gain Cleveland's defense and lost Kansas City's defense. And even though you had Kansas City's defense who gained Chris Jones back, I still think I'm actually going to prefer Cleveland's defense. Cleveland's defense was able to shut down the Bengals offense really well. Granted, it was raining, but overall, I still think that's a pretty good upgrade to have. So next up, we'll move on to Booty Basher. Booty Basher pretty much made only defensive moves here. His linebacker room, he gained Ernest Jones, he gained Divine Diablo, he lost Samson Ebukam and Frank Clark. Overall, I don't think that's bad at all. Frank Clark is technically starting, but I would still much rather have Ernest Jones, who's going to be getting tackles, and Divine Diablo is actually one of the best. He's probably going to be one of the better linebackers in the league this year, but I've yet to see him play more than 3 games without getting hurt. That's his problem, but overall, he's, as you saw week 1, he's known for getting a lot of good tackles, a lot of good points. That's 9 right there. Overall, that's a plus. Your D-line, you definitely improved. You gained Josh Sweat, you gained Carl Granderson, you lost Charles Harris, and then you lost A. Anderson. I don't even know who these guys are because they're just backups in real life. But overall, you gained Josh Sweat, who I think is going to be pretty reliant on sacks to do good. I am concerned about how bad he did in the Thursday night game. He had that 1 sack which held you over, but he was going up against a backup left tackle and still wasn't able to produce much, which is kind of concerning, but he still had QB pressures. Maybe he was close to getting more. Granderson I've never heard of, but I keep seeing him put up points, so I don't have a problem with him. Overall, he's at least a starter no matter what. He had a sack and a half in week 1, so overall it's a lot better than what you had. Your DB, it's a little bit of a weird situation where you could see it flipping either way. You gained Dax Hill, you lost Julian Love. Dax Hill could be the next, what do you want to call it, Jesse Bates, where he's getting tackles and plays left and right, playing for this Bengals secondary. However, Julian Love at the beginning of the season, I would probably have been like, yeah, cut him. Jamal Adams, for whatever reason, is just not playing. They keep saying he's hurt on a weekly basis, pretty much. For any game that Jamal Adams is out, that means Julian Love is going to become the starter. So overall, if that happens, keep an eye on Julian Love. This is to everybody in the league. His name is Julian Love, Julian Love. He's a DB for Seattle. Watch out for him. He will be one of the best defensive backs in the league for every week that Jamal Adams is out. I promise you guys, I had him all year last year. He was one of the best DBs in the league around the board with tackles, playmaking. He did it all. So overall, just keep an eye out for him and look up Jamal Adams, see what weeks he's out and if he's coming back, because when he comes back, that production's going to stop. Overall, Booty at least has starting guys now, which is making his team pretty dang good. Next up is myself. No, bear with me. This is a lot. Here. My quarterback room, I lost Bryce Young. I'm not too upset about that. He was my backup, but there's probably not too many good guys I can get on free agency overall, but still, he was my backup. I can't really complain there, but it's still a loss. A loss is a loss. My running backs, I gained Javonte Williams in the trade with with PMC Wagner. I gained Ezekiel Elliott in the trade with Toxic. I gained Cam Akers in the trade with Scrambled and waggled. I lost Joe Mixon in the trade with PMC. I cut Deion Jackson. I cut Zach Moss, who I believe would later go on to get picked up by Big Yawners, if I'm not mistaken. And then I also gained Kyron Williams from the Rams. Now, overall, I think this is an upgrade. I think Javonte Williams isn't as good as Joe Mixon. Not nearly necessarily, but he does have the upside too if he can stay healthy. Overall, I think if it was just Joe Mixon and him, I would have lost in the running back transactions, but I also gained Ezekiel Elliott and Cam Akers, and Kyron Williams, who all could be potential starters depending on how they play as the weeks go on. I don't really think losing Deion Jackson or Zach Moss is that big of a hit. Zach Moss might be decent. We haven't seen him play it, but Deion Jackson was literally averaging less than a yard per carry. So, yeah, I can't really say much good there. But at least getting depth, I think, makes this running back room worth it and an increase overall. My tight end, I gained Travis Kelce, and lost Mark Andrews. Obviously, that's an upgrade. Everybody knows Travis Kelce, number 1 tight end in the league. Then Andrews is going to be the second best tight end in the league, I think. but overall, it's still an upgrade. I gained a kicker. You guys ain't gonna believe. Oh wait, before we can go there, I also got Sam Laporta from the trade with Scrambled and waggled. I forgot to mention, completely forgot to mention that one. Um, I also gained Sam Laporta. We already talked about him where he has that upside, but he's a solid tight end in case Kels were to go down. Also, let's get into the wide receivers. I gained Mike Evans, gained A.J. Brown, gained Puka Nakua, lost Garrett Wilson, lost Jamison Williams, lost Jahan Dotson. I think this is an upgrade. A.J. Brown is a wide receiver one. He's been losing a lot of targets to Devontae Smith over the first few weeks, but overall, I think he'll come back and just do as good as he was doing last year. I definitely think that's way better than losing Garrett Wilson, who's the best receiver I lost. I gained Mike Evans, who I think is better than losing Jahan Dotson as well. And then I picked up Puka Nakua off of free agency. Now, Puka Nakua, there's nothing promised with him, but he seems to be the wide receiver one while Cup's gone. If that continues, he will be a very good player to have for any week Cup seems to miss. And then I lost Jamison Williams, who I will admit I think he's over projected. I don't think he's going to do nearly as good as Yahoo's projecting him to do, but it's definitely possible. Overall, I think this is an upgrade for the for the wide receiver room, especially with Aaron Rodgers going down. Wilson lost all that upside. Then I gained kicker Jake Elliott, woohoo. He's been doing really good with field goals. That's pretty much all I can say about him. My defense, I lost Jacksonville, which is a downgrade, but the only reason I had them to begin with was just because they were playing against an easy team week one against that Colts offense. So overall, I'm going to dock myself a little bit for that. My D-line, I gained Jonathan Allen, lost Cam Hayward. Jonathan Allen, I think, was the best option on free agency, but it was nothing crazy. I think he'll do solid overall, but he's not. He's just going to be slightly worse than Cam Hayward. DB, I gained Jesse Bates. Jesse Bates did phenomenal week one, so I just kind of picked him up to see what he can do. Other than that, there really isn't much to talk about. My linebackers, I gained Roquan Smith, lost Avondre Campbell, lost Shaquille Leonard, lost Cole Holcomb. Even though I got an elite linebacker one, losing all three of those are three potential starters. I think that's still a loss overall. But overall, I think this team got way better than it was before. At least to me, I think I got a lot of really good talent on this team. It's just a matter of if they can stay consistent and healthy. Next up, we're going to look at Toxic. Toxic gained Matthew Stafford in a trade with Pussy. So you remember? I don't know. Well, you know what? I'll just give a spoiler. Here's a spoiler now. Earlier this season, I said Toxic would be number one in terms of quarterback if he got a backup quarterback that was actually decent should Lamar Jackson or Justin Herbert go down. He did exactly that. Now he's number one on my list with ease. Matthew Stafford actually did really good week 1 too with backup wide receivers. We were just talking about Puka Nakua. If they can keep that up, that is a big upgrade. Overall, that's a pretty solid upgrade to have. No losses at quarterback. Running backs, you gain James Cook, Alvin Kamara from a trade with myself. You also gained Zach Charbonnet from a trade with Pussy. And you lost Ezekiel Elliott to myself in that trade we were talking about with the running backs. Overall, that's 2 potential starting running backs on a weekly basis. I think they'll both be startable on a weekly basis. You have Charbonnet, who I don't think is going to be anything special, but in case Kenneth Walker goes down, he might have some upside. And then you lost Elliott. Now, I do think Elliott might be startable in the upcoming weeks. New England has stated multiple times they plan on using him more and more, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. That's not really something you can say for sure, so you can't say that that's that bad of a downgrade. Overall, the running backs got way better. Wide receivers, you gained Rondale Moore and Zay Jones. You lost Cortland Sutton. You lost Jacoby Myers. You lost Mike Williams. You lost Jay Reed. And you lost McCole Hardman. Overall, this is a pretty bad downgrade in terms of your receivers. You lost at least 2 or 3 startable receivers for your team. And then you also lost 2 guys that would have been depth. I don't really think Reed and Hardman were going to do anything for you, to be honest. You did gain Rondale Moore, who has some upside when Murray returns, and Zay Jones. I don't think he'll do as good as he did this past week in many of the upcoming weeks, but he does have Trevor Lawrence throwing the ball to him, so he does have the upside. But overall, losing all those receivers, Mike Williams, Cortland Sutton, Jacoby Myers, that's definitely a downgrade. Your tight end, you lost Dalton Schultz, which isn't anything crazy. You just lost him. Overall, I don't think that's really much to worry about, but it's still a downgrade. Your DB, you gained Donovan Wilson. Now, there was something I was warning Tack about a lot this season. He constantly has injuries, and even when he's not even when he's not dealing with injuries, he's dealing with uh, substituting in and out with multiple other safeties. So I don't think he'll be nearly as good as he was last year in terms of fantasy, but at least you didn't lose a defensive back. So overall, that's still a plus. Your linebackers definitely got better. You gained Quincy Williams, lost David Long. David Long did jack shit diddly squat week 1 for the Dolphins. So losing him really isn't going to hurt you. Quincy Williams was probably one of the top highlights on the free agency linebacker core that you could have got. So overall, it got better. Your team definitely got better overall. Alrighty, next up, let's look at big yawners. Now, big yawners, in terms of running back, I think they took a huge hit from their running backs from now and then. They gained Justice Hill, gained Gus Edwards, gained Zach Moss. I don't think any of those three are startable with confidence. Maybe Zach Moss in a few weeks. We'll have to see. But I wouldn't be too happy about starting him until he proves something. The other two, I would literally never start unless I absolutely had to. And you lost J.K. Dobbins, who was the one guy on that running back core that actually would have been startable. That was a pretty big loss. You cut Antonio Gibson. Like I said, I think he's in a Cam Akers situation, but oh well, what can you do? It's still a pretty big loss to take. I'm not a fan of you doing that at all. I think that was a very bad move on your end. You lost Rashad Penny as well, but that doesn't really mean shit. Overall, this running back room really took a hit. I would try to find a trade or something because these guys just really aren't doing it. And that's not even counting how Aaron Jones is dealing with injuries now, but I'm not counting that against you. I'm just saying it's worth mentioning. Your receivers, you lost you lost Allen Lazard and Donovan Peoples-Jones, so you lost not two startable receivers, but two probably good depth receivers that you can't get on free agency right now. Well, maybe you can, but you're not going to get much great out of that, to be honest. But overall, it was depth. You lost it slightly on the downside. Your tight end, you gained Hayden Hurst. Let me see how he did with Bryce Young. I actually didn't see. He actually had a pretty good week. I don't know how consistent it'll be. Only time can tell. But at least you gained a tight end and didn't lose anything. So overall, that's a plus. Your linebacker, you gained Jermaine Pratt, lost Jordan Hicks. Personally, this is all personal preference here. I like Jordan Hicks a lot more than Jermaine Pratt in fantasy. They're both a bit inconsistent, but they both have a lot of upside on a weekly basis. Overall, I think this is a slight downgrade, but nothing too crazy. Another thing I don't like is starting two linebackers on the same team. That usually doesn't end up too well, and a defensive lineman. Yeah, usually starting that many people on the same team doesn't work out. Usually at least two of them will be in the red. And then you gained Indianapolis' defense to play the matchup. That's a pretty smart move to play defenses against bad offenses. Overall, I think your team actually downgraded quite a bit here compared to how it was before. Like I said, I would recommend trying to find a trade or doing something because, your running backs really aren't looking good here. And then finally, I believe, that's finally, we will look at PMC Wagner. Now, PMC Wagner, in terms of the running back room, gained Joe Mixon, gained Devon Achane, and lost Javonte Williams. Overall, this is an upgrade, not only because is Joe Mixon a lot safer than Javonte Williams, he also gained Devon Achane, who might be startable later in the season. Overall, better than what you're probably going to get on free agency. Overall, it's an upgrade at the running back room. Wide receivers, you've gained Garrett Wilson, gained Jameson Williams. You lost Mike Evans, and you lost Zay Jones. Overall, I think this is an upgrade, even with Aaron Rodgers being out. I still think Mike Evans is going to struggle with Baker Mayfield in a lot of these games. Jamison Williams, though, I would take him over Zay Jones just because at least he'll be the wide receiver 2 on his offense. Zay Jones has so many people to compete with. Tight end, you gain Mark Andrews, lost Travis Kelce. Most of these guys I just mentioned are guys that you got out of a trade with me. You know that. Overall, Mark Andrews, I already talked about this, is the second best tight end in the league, but it's still a downgrade compared to Kelce, so you're down there. You cut Miami, which I can't really give you any positive points for. It's not that bad, though. I wouldn't go crying yourself to sleep over losing Miami. Your linebackers, you gained Devondre Campbell, Shaquille Leonard, lost Roquan Smith, and Josie Jewell. Overall, that's a lot worse than gaining them. Campbell has the upside to be competitive around Roquan Smith. So does Leonard, but they're both so injury prone. I just don't believe in them. D line, you gained Will Anderson, lost Chris Anderson, or Granderson. That's definitely an upgrade. I think Will Anderson, there's a reason the Texans traded up for him. I think he's had a sack in every game he's played in so far. That's counting preseason games. So that's definitely an upgrade. Overall, I think your team upgraded, but you're really going to be hurting from that Aaron Rodgers injury, obviously. But that overall, your moves you've been making have been good. And that's all. That's been all the free agency moves between now and September 1st. In case you didn't catch it, I didn't mention things like, say, people picked a guy up and then traded him, or picked a guy up and then cut him. I didn't count stuff like that. I'm just looking at their final team now, like the notable additions they gained and lost, for example, Because if I talked about the guys that were picked up and dropped 45 times, I'd be sitting here stuck on PMC for like the next 45 minutes after he picked up and dropped Tank Bigsby 14 times. So, what can you do? Overall, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. This was just kind of like saying what teams have been doing in the off season since week 1 and 2, and since I made all those ranking videos. I'll update the rankings whenever we get to a quarter of the way through the season, like I said, but that's just kind of insight. I'll try to update it once a week on what the free agency is doing with the trades and with the pickups. I hope you guys like this. This one was definitely a lot more complicated than the ones I usually do, which is why I might have uh, been trying to come up with words for a lot of stuff. But yeah, there's a lot to go over here. I hope you enjoyed. I'll catch you later.